Mackenzie Shirilla's text messages after the deadly crash that left two young men dead shed a whole other light on this case. So we're going to break down the conversations that she had after this incident that would ultimately see her behind bars, and more details from a police report that gives us a better understanding of this investigation. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Now, if you're watching this and you're into content creation or you're putting things out on social media, you might be wondering, how do we get all these clips out there so quickly? Well, we use something called Opus Clip. This is an all-in-one AI editor that makes it so easy to cut, create, and upload videos across any platform. Through AI, Opus Clip generates B-roll, it reframes footage, and it even cleans up audio. It is so easy. You just visit opus.pro/sidebar, you sign up, you upload, and in minutes, you will have perfectly edited clips ready to go for TikTok, Shorts, Reels. Opus Clip is really your one-stop shop, and having a tool like Opus Clip means that our producers can get you viral courtroom updates instantly. This is the most powerful tool there is to share ideas and edit like a pro. So go to opus.pro/sidebar to get a free week and then 50% off. You know, I say text messages are sometimes such powerful evidence because once a message is sent, it can be very hard to argue that you didn't send it or you didn't mean what you wrote. And that is why I want to address right now the communications in the Mackenzie Shirilla case. We have been covering all aspects of the young woman who was found guilty by a judge in a bench trial back in 2023 of 4 counts of murder, 4 counts of felonious assault, 2 counts of aggravated vehicular homicide, 1 count of drug possession, and 1 count of possessing criminal tools, all in connection with the July 31st, 2022 car crash that killed her boyfriend, Dominic Russo, and their friend, Davion Flanagan. Dominic was 20, Davion was 19. Now, the 17-year-old, Shirilla at the time, mashed down the accelerator, never tried to brake. This is according to investigative reports. Sailed over a curb, through a business sign, into a brick wall. Now, Shirilla has insisted that ever since she has no memory whatsoever of the crash or the minutes leading up to it, which we'll get into, because she and her family have suggested that she has a diagnosis of POTS. It's a medical condition that can cause dizziness or fainting, so they claim Shirilla must have blacked out, which is why she drove off the road. Shirilla's mother even testified at the bench trial that she'd seen her daughter exhibit symptoms of POTS, but the defense never called a medical examiner to testify that Shirilla actually has the condition, so it didn't seem to convince the judge. And by the way, there was no evidence of a car malfunction. There was no evidence of intoxication from drugs or alcohol. Shirilla, she was arrested several months after the tragedy, so in November of 2022, and after her 2023 trial, she was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole starting in 2037. But Shirilla and her family have continued to maintain that she's innocent, and this includes in her first on-camera interview from behind bars in a new documentary on Netflix called The Crash. For example, she told the documentary's producers, "I'm not a monster, I'm not saying I'm innocent, I was a driver of a tragedy, but I'm not a murderer." When asked about a relationship with Dominic, which we're going to explore in a little bit more, "We would have probably been married by now. We argued, we got back together, we broke up, we got back together. It was rocky, but it was good. We were in love." And then she added, when it was revealed that her attorney was reportedly right there in the room next to her during this interview on tape, which she did again from behind bars, she added, quote, "I'm big on the no intent. There was no intent whatsoever there. I have excessive amounts of remorse for Dominic, Davion, both of their families. This was not intentional, and I will do everything I can to prove that to the world and the families, and that's it." I give all that backstory to talk now about text messages. When you go to this phone records document, which is, by the way, up on Law and Crime Plus, our app, you go to the case files section. We have a whole section for Mackenzie Shirilla on all the documents if you want to do a deep dive into the case. What you see, for example, are multiple attempts by Mackenzie Shirilla to contact what appears to be members of the Russo family, particularly Dominic's mother. So this is after the crash, again, before she was arrested in November of 2022. So for example, in August, so this is just a short time after the crash, Shirilla writes, apparently in reference to Dom's funeral, "I love you so much, Miss Russo. I'm sorry for being on FaceTime, made you guys upset. I just needed to see if he looks so peaceful, and thank you guys for putting pictures of me. I'm so sorry, you guys. I wish I could be there to hug you. I love you all so much, and I'm so sorry." "I'm so sorry, Miss Russo. I love you all so much. I'm so sorry that this happened. I miss him so much. I wish I could be there for you guys. I will always be here for you, and when I'm out of the hospital, I can take care of you whenever you need." And then she talks about what she wants to put in his coffin. I tried to ask Angelo, but would you be able to go in Dom's room and go into his bedroom and on his back desk and grab some stuff to put in his coffin? I just wanted to be with him. And she seemed to be very aware that she needed to be careful and not cross any lines with this family, because look at this message from August 9th. Just let me know if you want me to stop bothering you. I will always be here when you're ready to talk. And remember, she's still in the hospital after the crash recovering. For example, this one from September 23rd, I don't want to bother you and I feel bad for asking if you guys are doing something for Dom's birthday and you don't want me to come. Are you going to go to the grave and maybe we can meet there or something? I'm sorry. And it goes into October. Again, a month before her arrest, she's still reaching out. And a big theme is, why do people hate her? If you don't hate me, I don't understand why they all hate me. And after there's an exchange about Instagram, again, maybe Dom's mother, Mackenzie writes back, I know I could help you if you want to, but I was just telling you I don't understand why they hate me if you don't hate me. I'm really stressed out about people moving my things or making it look different than it was when Dom lived there, because I think they had been living together. My top priority is just being able to go inside of that house and just be there for the day. It hurts that everybody but me is allowed in the house. It already hurts seeing all of his friends there at night spending time with you, but it hurts even worse seeing I'm the only one not allowed in his house that I spent the most time in. I just don't get why everybody has to hate me. It just makes me hate myself even more. I wish everybody would just not hate me. I really can't tell if you hate me or not. I feel like if you didn't hate me, you wouldn't let me come over or be there for you, or you would tell everybody that they shouldn't hate me, but I feel like you just don't like me, and I wish you would just tell me so I could stop bugging you. The response back is, this is all emotional. I can't tell anyone to do anything. I don't hate you. Gosh, I'm having a tough time with just not having my son. The response back from Sharilla is, you can't tell them to, but you could tell them that you don't hate me, and it's hard for me to. I'm also having a tough time. He was the love of my life, and I spent my last 4 years every day with him pretty much. I just don't understand why I'm the only one not allowed inside of his house. I know he wouldn't want this. I didn't just lose Dom, lost my whole other family, and that's you guys. Now, there were several times during the course of these communications where the conversation circles back to what exactly happened that night, and that Sharilla claims she can't remember. For example, Sharilla was asked, what made you start speeding? Sharilla responds, I don't remember the accident. All I remember is turning on the street and then my vision fading into black. I wish I could remember it. Would make me feel a little bit better. So this is a message from Christine Russo, again, Dominic's mother, to Sharilla. It says, I would do anything to have you both with me like before, but you need and you have to understand how one feels about this. Your driving killed my son, their brother, and their best friend. No one has any answers about why this accident occurred and why you drove directly into a building which resulted in 2 young men dying. It was not an ordinary car accident. If it was, we would not be having this conversation. Sharilla responds, I didn't know you felt that way. I hope you would know I would never do this on purpose. I needed him more than anybody on this earth. He was my everything. The response back, I was explaining to you why it's difficult for things to try to be normal as they never will be. It still never answers what happened that night. Sharilla responds, I wish I could remember just as much as you want to know why. It kills me not being able to remember, because if I could help, I would. I wasn't asking for life to be normal. It's never going to be the same for me either. And then I got to read you this one where Sharilla responds, I did not do this on purpose. If I knew any of this would happen, I would have made sure it was me that died. I would think you would understand, but good to know that you think it's all my fault. I do understand that nothing is ever going to be the same. We're in the same boat. We both lost extremely important people to us. Then there's another part that says, everybody's life is hell. Everybody is broken over this. It's not just you and Angelo, and I wish I could take that pain away from you guys and just make it so it's only me. I try so hard to tell you guys that I would never do this on purpose, and I thought you would know that. Then there's this one. Could you please try to help me get people to see that I didn't do this on purpose? Seriously hurts my soul that anyone thinks that, and I can't sleep knowing that. This is from October 14th. And then it also says, I don't want to lose any more of my family. There's a message to Sharilla that says, no one says that directly. I just said looking from the other side. It's hard to explain anything when you said you don't remember any of it. And then Sharilla responds, I know everybody thinks that though, especially Angelo and I care so much about him, even though he hates me. You guys are my family. I've just been having a rough couple days. I'm trying really hard to talk to everybody. There's this one. Can we please just try to fix this? All I know is it's never going to be the same, but I want to be able to come spend time with you guys. I wish I could bring you guys closer or tell you what happened. If I could remember anything, I would tell you. Now she's asked, what's the last thing you remember? I remember turning onto the street and then my vision fades to black. It really kills me not being able to remember anything. I promise you I would tell you. I've been asking my therapist why I don't remember, and she said it's because of trauma, but I'm going to try to go get hypnotized and make myself remember. And what's interesting also is how much in these conversations she talks about how much she loves Dom. So Sharilla writes at one point, life is just going to be effed up. He was just someone that did something for all of us and made us all feel loved and protected in a special way. He had a really certain soul that was like no other. I've never met anybody that was like him, and he grew so much in our relationship, it just hurts. He was a mama's boy. He would literally be there for you no matter what. And then there's this one. Our relationship was getting so real. Like I felt like we were going to get married soon. And S, it's just so bleeped. Now, speaking of text messages, the text messages between Sharilla and Dominic are included in investigative paperwork. And I just want to take a look. I want to focus on a conversation that happened just 4 weeks before Dom's death. So this looks like he was trying to end things, even writing, there isn't very much time on earth. Quote, Kenzie, you know I love you, but I don't think we should be together at this point. There isn't very much time on earth, you know. I'd like to think we could stop fighting, but it's a breakup fight every week. Neither of us deserve that. I don't want to fight all the time. I know you don't either. Anyone who's around anyone every day of the week is bound to fight. If we can't separate for a little, then we're only going to fight more. I don't want you to think I'm abandoning you. I wish it could work, but I don't think it's going to at this point, especially with the threats. We should just break up so we can both find happiness somewhere else. And that text was followed up by another one just a few hours later, asking Sharilla if she wants to try to work things out. Now there's another document, a police department document that lays out essentially the whole timeline of this investigation. It's up on Law and Crime Plus, the app as well. And a part of that are these text messages between Sharilla and Christine Russo. Now we believe, again, this to be Dom's mother, not his sister, who share the same name, but I'm going to read you these exchanges. So January 30th, 2021, Mackenzie writes, Dom is texting me being really crazy, so please keep an eye on him. I'm worried AF. January 31st, 2021. Mackenzie writes, I didn't mean to make him flip out. I just can't take him yelling at me all night and all day. Russo responds, I know, you should have just hugged him. March 5th, 2022. Russo writes, hey, just go home. Avoid any conflict, please. You can call me. Mackenzie writes, I'm Jay waiting to talk to him. Russo responds, they just left. It's going to be a while. You should respect his space while he's gone. Russo says, I asked you to leave. You should have respect and left. Mackenzie writes, he's home now. July 2nd, 2022. So this is right before the crash, only a few weeks before the crash, right? July 2nd, 2022. Russo writes, don't fight, just leave, take a break. Mackenzie writes, I already left Dom, need some therapy, he's so mean. July 17th, 2022. Mackenzie writes, can you come get Dom? He just grabbed my steering wheel on the highway trying to spin out my car and hurt me. Mackenzie writes, I'm scared to drive because it's raining, so I just need him to get picked up. If he doesn't get out of my car, I'm calling my dad, so please tell him to get out. Russo responds, Hench is on his way. Calm down for now, please. Mackenzie writes, TBH, to be honest, I can't calm down when he just tried to end my life. Mackenzie writes, then he lied to you about it. Russo writes, I'm just trying to diffuse for now. I'm not mad at anyone. Mackenzie says, I don't think he's capable of that when he keeps telling me to shut up and to duct tape my mouth. Mackenzie says, I don't feel safe. He's also threatening to blackmail me to my mom. He's not getting out. He also blocked me, so I can't go pick up any of my belongings at his house. I hope this is a learning experience for him on what not to do to women because I really don't think he knows how to treat them all. Russo responds, stop the fighting and stop lying. When he gets his things, you can get yours. Mackenzie says, first of all, I'm not lying about anything. Maybe you shouldn't take his word so seriously. You don't know how he treats me behind closed doors. It's never okay to try to end somebody's life or put their hands on people. Russo responds, no one should touch anyone. No fighting for sure in the car. He never put his hands on you. Mackenzie says, you need to tell him that. He tried to end my life today and told me, do you want to die? Mackenzie writes, I almost hit the wall and I could have died. So eerily, very eerie considering what happened only a few weeks later. Russo responds, And you haven't blackmailed him with the cops 100 times? But when police followed up with Hench, the friend who picked up Dom during that early July incident, Dom claimed it was Sharilla who threatened to crash the car. And that was relayed to police in an interview with it saying, quote, I asked Russo about a text message exchange with Mackenzie dated July 17, 2022. At approximately 12:45 hours, Mackenzie asked Russo to pick up Dominic from her car, which was stopped at the side of an unknown highway. Mackenzie claimed Dominic had grabbed her steering wheel in an attempt to spin out the car and hurt her. Russo explained that Mackenzie always blamed Dominic for whatever issues were going on between them. She further added that Dominic called her and calmly asked her to come pick him up because Kenzie is being crazy. She's threatening to crash the car on the highway. Christopher Martin, who goes by Hench, picked up Dominic that day. He was identified by Russo as a friend of Dominic. And several other witnesses talked about Sharilla's driving, including a friend Kelly, who had been with Sharilla, Dom, and Davion at a party before the crash. Quote, when I asked her if she had ever been in the car with Mackenzie as the driver, she said no. Kelly mentioned that her friend Tess had told her that Mackenzie sucked at driving. Kelly believed Tess was someone who knew Mackenzie very well. And then there's this interview with Paul Burlinghouse, the friend who'd hosted the get-together. Quote, next, I inquired whether Paul had ever been a passenger in Mackenzie's car while she drove. He said, I've refused a ride from Mackenzie. When asked why, he said because she was a bad driver. He further explained that she got in fights while driving. He listed an incident between Mackenzie and her neighbor who confronted her about running a stop sign. Paul said he used to see Mackenzie zipping through Pearl Road after school. Paul said he refused rides from Mackenzie because he was not stupid and did not want to put himself in a situation he wouldn't want to be in. Paul mentioned Rosie, who was one of Mackenzie's passengers, told him, don't go in the car with Kenzie, it's not good. And it turns out that Sharilla's Snapchat account was a treasure trove of information. The investigators compiled more than 130 videos or images that were related to Sharilla's driving. I mean, the report states, for example, Mackenzie is driving while simultaneously recording herself on Snapchat. A person in the driver's seat recorded a Snapchat video of the vehicle traveling at 90 miles per hour. Multiple videos exist of Mackenzie recording herself while driving without wearing the seatbelt over her shoulder. In others, the seatbelt is visible under her armpit. Mackenzie records the speedometer of the vehicle she's operating, traveling at 93 miles per hour. So again, when you look at this in the context of what happened to her, what happened to Dominic, what happened to Davion, it's just chilling, to say the least, right? And one of the aspects of the case that is getting a lot of attention is Sharilla's behavior after the crash, appearing to essentially live her life in a way where the argument was it didn't seem like she cared what happened. For example, here's what a police narrative says about trying to speak with Sharilla in the hospital. This is along with her dad, Steve, and her mom, Natalie. Quote, the three of us returned to the room. Mackenzie was conscious and alert. Goes on to say, I explained to all three the details of the search warrant and the basic nature of the investigation. Steve asked about video surveillance from the crash itself. I also informed them that SPD will be downloading the data from the Toyota's event data recorder pursuant to another search warrant. Natalie then inquired about the location of the Toyota. At some point, Mackenzie interrupted and addressed her mom in a language that I did not understand. Her mother replied, you can, indicating that she understood what Mackenzie had said. Mackenzie then turned to me and stated, take my whole license away for 10 years or something like that. Again, the argument would be not appreciating what happened, right? The seriousness of what happened, the crime that she ultimately was convicted of. How about this? Apparently, one of Davion's family members emailed the detective a screenshot of Sharilla's Instagram, which was later shown during Sharilla's sentencing hearing. And it says, quote, this is a screenshot from our daughter Divine's phone of comments, the social media post from Kenzie about her modeling career. This post is from later in the week after the accident while Kenzie was in the hospital. Divine believes that it was approximately 2 days after the accident. The post was commented on by both Kenzie and her mother talking about furthering her modeling career. We are extremely upset to see this post and felt it was very disrespectful to our family's loss and to Davion and Dom. It is sickening that someone could be so self-absorbed after causing the death of two people and destroying any hopes of their future plans. Now, when I read that report, I will tell you some of the most impactful legal aspects of this police report are about the actual car data. Was this an accident or was it not, right? So you go to the report, it says, quote, Ohio State Highway Patrol Sergeant Ryan Fox emailed me his analysis of the EDR data. Prior to the Camry entering the intersection, a loud screeching sound can be heard from the business surveillance system camera that records the approach and crash of the Camry. This loud screeching is likely the result of a steering input of the driver and the inability of the tires and friction of the roadway to overcome the forward momentum of the vehicle. The vehicle's tires are likely turned as requested by the steering input reported, but the vehicle is continuing more in its original forward trajectory. This likely indicates manipulation of the steering wheel immediately prior to entering the intersection. The brake light that was illuminated mere fractions of a second prior to impact. The system will activate the rear brake lights to indicate the possible slowing of the vehicle to other motorists, even if the driver is not pressing on the brake pedal. The extreme driver input for the vehicle prior to the collision, the brake light activation, is likely the result of the safety systems working to avoid the impact ahead or return the vehicle to a straight orientation for the direction of travel. This likely indicates that although the steering wheel was manipulated left and right, no braking was applied by the operator. So there you go. Some more things to think about in the Mackenzie Shirilla case as it's back in the conversation, it's back in the dialogue. We're learning more information. We'll stay on top of it here on Sidebar. That's all we have for you right now. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you next time, everybody. In a brand new bombshell sex trafficking lawsuit, 4 adult siblings are claiming that Michael Jackson sexually abused them as children and that they also allege the estate is trying to keep them quiet. We are breaking down the allegations, the timeline, the potential evidence, and the response from the deceased pop star's estate right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. By the way, if you're putting things out on social media, if you're into content creation, you might be wondering how we're able to share so many of these clips from all of these stories so quickly. Well, we use something called Opus Clip. This is an all-in-one AI editor that makes it so easy to cut, create, and upload videos across any platform. Through AI, Opus Clip generates B-roll, reframes footage, and it even cleans up audio. It is so easy. You just visit opus.pro/sidebar, you sign up, you upload, and in minutes you will have perfectly edited clips ready to go for TikTok, Shorts, Reels. Opus Clip is your one-stop shop. And having a tool like Opus Clip means that our producers can get you viral courtroom updates instantly. This is the most powerful tool there is to share ideas and edit like a pro. So go to opus.pro/sidebar to get a free week and then 50% off. You know, we cover a lot of celebrity lawsuits here on Sidebar. It's kind of been a common theme for us over the past few years. I have to talk now about one that is truly bombshell. 4 adult siblings have just filed an official lawsuit against the estate of Michael Jackson and others in a bombshell sex trafficking lawsuit. Edward, Dominic, Marie Nicole, and Aldo Cassio allege that Jackson, Michael Jackson, who died in 2009 at the age of 50, quote, groomed and brainwashed them as children, including supplying them with drugs, alcohol, gifts, isolating them, exposing them to pornography, and sexually abusing them. Here's a quote from the lawsuit. Michael Jackson was a serial predator who over the course of more than a decade drugged, raped, and sexually assaulted each of the plaintiffs, beginning when some were as young as 7 or 8. And the filing alleges that the abuse occurred over extended periods of time in, quote, locations around the world, and when Jackson and his children were guests in plaintiff's family home. And they claim that, again, this abuse happened for years. They described this relationship with Jackson over a 25-year period, so you're talking about the 1980s, until his death in 2009, by the way. The sex trafficking component is key because you have these claims that Jackson allegedly sexually abused them during travel, right? Traveling across state lines, traveling when leaving the country, including, by the way, on his Dangerous World Tour. I will give you an example. Aldo has made the claim that he was just 7 when his parents let him go with Jackson alone to Florida for dance training, but claims ultimately he was sexually assaulted. This is according to an interview he did with the Daily Mail. And by the way, the claims include, aside from sex trafficking of children by force, fraud, or coercion, which we'll talk more about, you also have these claims of negligence, negligent hiring, supervision, or retention of employee. So basically that's the idea of that the alleged enablers, they had a duty to protect these siblings, and they failed. They had a duty to not create an environment where Michael Jackson would have allegedly done this. You have intentional infliction of emotional distress, breach of contract, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, rescission, and declaratory judgment. A lot of that is, and we'll get into this, is based upon the circumstances surrounding these siblings signing a contract that they claim was fraudulent, that should be thrown out, that's unenforceable, that was a way to misrepresent who was getting them to sign. They didn't realize they were signing an agreement with the Jackson estate to allegedly keep them quiet. We'll talk more about that. But again, you have multiple claims here, and there's a demand for a jury trial. There's obviously a claim for damages here. And let me tell you who this lawsuit's against. It's against the Michael Jackson Company, so it's an LLC, a limited liability company. John Branca, who is a co-administrator of the estate of Michael Jackson, co-trustee of the Michael Jackson Family Trust. You also have John McClain as co-administrator of the estate and co-trustee of the Michael Jackson family. MJJ Productions LLC, MJJ Ventures LLC, Herman Weisberg, we'll talk about him, and Does 1 through 20. Now, the family reportedly first connected with Jackson when the siblings' father was a manager of a hotel in New York City that Jackson would frequently stay at. And this father ended up introducing Michael Jackson to his family, and the pop star apparently became close friends with the family, and the kids would apparently end up staying at Jackson's Neverland Ranch out in California. These are the allegations. Again, the siblings claim that ultimately they were abused. According to the Daily Mail, the siblings' father even described this, what appears to be an alleged red flag with Jackson, where he said that Jackson had stated, "I want to surprise the kids." He arrived at their house, and Connie, the wife, the mother, says he wanted to see the kids' rooms. He told jokes to the kids. He was so kind, we didn't think about it. Now, here's the tricky part. When Jackson had previously been accused of sexual abuse of children in the 90s, the family defended him, even sending him a fax saying that they support him. Now, to be clear, these parents asked their children first if anything ever happened, and they said no. You know, Frank apparently even wrote a book back in 2001 that was highlighting what seemed to be an innocent relationship. It was called My Friend Michael, An Ordinary Friendship with an Extraordinary Man. But obviously now the claim is that that wasn't true. According to Complex in the complaint, it was really after that HBO documentary premiered, Leaving Neverland, that these siblings wanted to move forward with their accusations against Jackson. And they claim, and I'll get into this more, that they were pressured into signing what is essentially a confidentiality agreement, that they couldn't speak about what happened to them, but that the circumstances surrounding that it was fraudulent, that it was misrepresented what had happened. Now, one of the things that Aldo had said to the Daily Mail was that he actually felt relieved when Michael Jackson died, saying, quote, "I also had to act sad. I knew that I had to play this double role. Why did he do this to me? I hated him. I knew I couldn't free myself of it. I had to live my whole life alone with this, and it was hell." And to give you an idea of what Aldo claims happened to him, there's just this one segment I have to mention. He claims, "I was just sitting on the bed with him during the day, and I was just playing my Game Boy, and I remember he just went to me and pulled down my shorts." Now, Michael allegedly told him, "I make you feel good because I love you. And you know, we've talked about love before, so for me, this was just like an extension of that. And so I was like, okay, I love you too." And that was how he hooked me in. Aldo says it eventually matured into full-blown sex with Michael Jackson at 10 years old, and that the pop star would coach him to deny if anyone ever asked what had happened between the two. And he also claims that Michael Jackson gave him Xanax. Quote, "The truth was I was terrified of him, the way he brainwashed me. I was scared for my own life." Says the last time he spoke with Michael Jackson was 3 days before Jackson died. He claims the singer turned the conversation sexual. Marie Nicole claims she was abused by Michael Jackson in 2001, saying he talked about how it's very normal for men and women to be naked. He asked me to take off my clothes, so I did what he said. Now, you remember when I said that everything changed when the Leaving Neverland documentary came out? Well, Aldo claims that is when he realized that this was allegedly happening to others, and that he essentially felt safe to come forward. Finally told his parents what he claims happened. Connie, the mother here, says, "I feel responsible for all this. I should have known what was happening to my kids, and I didn't. I saw Jackson being so lonely and lost because his career was diminishing." And then that's when Aldo's siblings revealed that they were allegedly abused too. And here's the key. This is about the contract. So the siblings claim that in 2019, the Jackson estate had pressured them into signing a contract without having lawyers to essentially silence them. That one of the defendants, the guy I mentioned before, Herman Weisberg, allegedly misrepresented who he was working for. That in reality, he was working for the Jackson estate when he approached them saying that he was just looking to fairly compensate them. Quote, Weisberg convinced the family, including plaintiffs, that he would be working for them, not for Jackson's estate. Among other things, Weisberg said the Jackson estate was the evil empire, that he would never work for the estate or its representatives. Goes on to say, shortly after the Weisberg introduction, prominent Jackson estate attorney Brian Friedman told the family, including plaintiffs, that the estate would compensate them for Jackson's crimes. Although plaintiffs understood that Friedman represented the Jackson estate, Friedman convinced plaintiffs that he was working in their interests. Unknown to plaintiffs, Weisberg's job was to neutralize the threat that leaving Neverland would trigger public disclosures from other Jackson victims, including plaintiffs. And then it goes on to say, later on in 2019, Weisberg told the family that the estate believed them and was prepared to compensate them fairly for the suffering Jackson had caused. Weisberg then showed plaintiffs a legal document deceptively titled Acquisition and Consulting Agreement, the document. That was the first time they saw the document. On information and belief, defendants used that harmless-sounding title to obscure the unfair and unconscionable nature of the document so that plaintiffs would accept and sign the document without protest. Weisberg did not let plaintiffs read the document and did not give them a copy. The estate and its lawyers knew not only that the statements in the document that plaintiffs had an opportunity to consult with counsel and that the document was jointly drafted were false, but also that the estate and its lawyers had themselves prevented plaintiffs from consulting with counsel and negotiating the terms of the document, and that the estate presented it to plaintiffs on a, quote, take it or leave it basis. Weisberg told the family vaguely that the document was a life rights agreement that would give the Jackson estate the exclusive rights to plaintiffs' experiences with Jackson. In fact, buried within the document's legalese was a purported release of the estate from liability for Jackson's crimes and language that prohibited plaintiffs from reporting Jackson's crimes. It goes on to say, plaintiffs retained independent counsel and learned for the first time that Weisberg worked for the estate. When plaintiffs demanded compensation proportional to Jackson's crimes and the harm they caused, Branca and McLean instructed Weisberg to try to convince plaintiffs to fire their independent counsel. Plaintiffs refused. Branca and the Jackson estate then engaged in a public blame the victim campaign to intimidate plaintiffs and their counsel. Branca's statements materially breached the confidentiality and non-disparagement terms in the document by disclosing the existence of the document and disparaging plaintiffs. On July 9, 2025, Branca, McLean, the estate, and MJC filed a petition to compel arbitration out in Los Angeles. The petition repeated much of what Branca had published in the press. The petition was in direct violation of the terms of the document, which expressly prohibited defendants from defaming plaintiffs and from making any court filing relating to the document. So that's where you get the breach of contract claim. Now, the timing of this lawsuit is key, too, because it's our understanding, based on the reporting, that it was filed 1 month after these siblings, these plaintiffs, were in LA court. They were trying to void this document, this agreement. And again, they said it was an unlawful agreement to silence victims of childhood sexual abuse. That's the quote. Now, here's the other side. The attorney for Jackson's estate, Marty Singer, released a statement to People, called the lawsuit, quote, a desperate money grab by additional members of the family who have hopped on the bandwagon with their brother Frank, who is already being sued in arbitration for civil extortion. The family staunchly defended Michael Jackson for more than 25 years, attesting to his innocence of inappropriate conduct. This new court filing is a transparent forum shopping tactic in their scheme to obtain hundreds of millions of dollars from Michael's estate and companies. Now, he also said statements by the Cassios, including those appearing in dozens of passages throughout Frank Cassio's 2011 book, as well as in interviews with Oprah Winfrey and others, directly contradict what is being alleged now. Singer's statement continues. Throughout, the Cassios consistently and repeatedly asserted that Michael never harmed any of them or anyone else. With the estate's financial success growing, the family, through 2 different attorneys, threatened to go public with heinous accusations that completely contradicted their previous statements defending Michael unless his estate paid staggering sums of money. So you're basically alleging extortion here, right? And I should tell you also, and this is important, that Michael Jackson was never criminally convicted of child sexual abuse. But I want to talk about this now. All right, so whenever we have a big celebrity case, I think who might be good for this? Of course, litigator Richard Schoenstein is with us in studio. Good to see you. Thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it. Initial impressions of this?
Well, I just read the complaint, which
Yeah.
you were kind enough to give me. After reading the reports, it is a very salacious, very provocative story of continued abuse, grooming, rape, and everything that goes along with that over many years. So if it's true, it's shocking.
Talk to me about the timing of it. I think that's really interesting, right? So a lot of people would, and I mentioned this in the intro, a lot of people say, why come out now? Well, first, there was the idea of, there's always complicated factors in terms of alleged sexual abuse, particularly of children, when they would feel comfortable coming forward, acknowledging what happened, particularly if you're dealing with a high-profile individual. But also, I think it was key, if you take the allegations as true, this coming out after Finding Neverland, that docuseries, right? And that other people experienced allegedly what they experienced. But also, what's different about this is the claim that the estate was allegedly trying to silence them, trying to have them sign an agreement several years back. And now there's been a back and forth about, did they breach the agreement? Did these representatives from the estate breach the agreement? There's now a legal fight going on. What are you taking away from that?
There's a lot of things playing into the timing of this. I mean, the first of all is there's this California legislation that provides a window for adult survivors of abuse to bring a claim. And I think that window goes until sometime in 2027 in the latest iteration of that legislation that was signed last year. So there's a window for these claims to be brought. That's number one. Number two, in my view, there is sort of renewed interest in Michael Jackson. There's kind of this Michael Jackson renaissance going on, which would be a good time to go after the estate for a settlement if that was your strategy, because there's going to be more content coming out about Michael Jackson, and perhaps you want to persuade the estate that they want to quiet these claims going into that so they don't have to deal with them.
I mean, according to the Daily Mail, since his death, Jackson's estate has generated $3 billion in revenue. Now, they made the point that this is not about money, this is about accountability. And I'm curious, let's start here with this agreement that they claim is void, that is unenforceable. Do you think they have an argument there based on their assertion of the facts, right? It's their narrative that they didn't know what they were really signing, they weren't properly represented. What'd you make of that?
So I would need to know a lot more to determine if they have an argument. First of all, I haven't seen the agreement. I haven't seen what it says. Typically in an agreement like that, you're going to put in very specific language that the people signing it have read it, have understood it, have had an opportunity to consult counsel, whether or not they did consult counsel. I would want to see all of those things in the agreement. I would want to know exactly when it was signed. I would want to know the ages of each signator to make sure that they were adults at the time they signed them. I want to know the terms of it, exactly how much money each of them got in exchange for it. I would have to parse all of that. There is a potential claim, but as I read the complaint, the central complaint about it is we didn't get a fair amount of money to settle these claims.
Well, also they didn't know what they were exactly signing, right? They didn't know who this Weisberg guy was representing. Yeah. They were given allegedly a false representation of what they were exactly signing, what the meaning of the agreement was, and that, kind of buried in it was this idea that they're releasing the estate from liability, and also that they can't talk about what happened. They thought, if you base it, they thought that perhaps what they were signing, the other party, was going to own their stories and maybe amplify their stories about what happened under Michael Jackson.
The lawyer in me is a little skeptical of the I didn't know what I was signing argument. I've heard that made
If I'm understanding correctly.
Yeah. I've heard that made before in other cases, and I'm always kind of skeptical of that argument. But I would want to know the facts. I think it's an issue that can be litigated in court or maybe in arbitration. That's a whole other issue. The agreement supposedly requires arbitration. So you have to decide whether the issue of the agreement's enforceability would be decided in court or in arbitration. And if the plaintiffs are saying it is void ab initio because it was procured by fraud, then it should be determined in court probably. If the plaintiffs are saying there's some other infirmity or problem with the agreement, then that might have to be decided in arbitration.
And that's one of the things they want. They want a declaratory judgment. They want an understanding that this was fraudulent. And they basically say that the people they're suing breached the agreement. They're forcing arbitration. They're creating a blame game in the public sphere about what they were after. They're calling them, extortionists. To me, I want to just go back to something. You think the timing of this, if this is all true, to get this family to sign this, stay quiet, that's the allegation, because this big biopic is coming up, right? Am I saying, it's biopic, right?
Biopic.
But I think that's,
Biopic.
Biopic, I always get the word.
Know.
But that is a key here, right? I mean, that's supposed to revitalize maybe Michael Jackson's career. I think his nephew might be starring in it.
Yeah.
So you think the timing of that could be key?
So it's an interesting question, right? You said the estate has generated $3 billion. And it's because of that music. The music is ubiquitous. The music is unquestionable. The music prevails over everything else. So that's generated all of this money. But separately, we have the issue of the persona of Michael Jackson. And yeah, there's going to be a movie. There's going to be, when that movie is out, there's going to be marketing of his music, right? That's the way it works. The movie comes out, they repackage the music, they try to sell more music. So from the point of view of the estate, the last thing they want is renewed focus on his personal problems, issues.
I have to imagine that this estate doesn't want this to go to trial. Because talk to me about what, and I'll get into the different claims and the allegations. The allegations are horrific.
Right.
This would be litigated. There would be discovery. Would we get an understanding of what really happened? I mean, how do you imagine a trial like this would look? What evidence would come out to prove that these individuals, these siblings, were sexually abused by Michael Jackson? What would be the evidence?
If they can get past the settlement agreement, or whatever that agreement was,
Sure.
And if they can keep it in court and get past arbitration, one of the reasons the estate wants it in arbitration is that's private. We don't see it.
Can you explain what that is, arbitration, so people know?
Arbitration is a private dispute mechanism, dispute resolution mechanism. You hire a private arbitrator and you go have a trial, but you do it in a private conference room.
And we wouldn't know anything about it.
No, Court TV, Law and Crime, they don't cover arbitration.
Right.
They can't get in the door.
Okay.
They don't see a transcript. There's no film of it. There's generally no reporting of it. It's sometimes governed by confidentiality orders. So right, it's private. That is one of the key advantages of arbitration from the point of view of the defendant. So if you're the plaintiff in this matter, you want to get rid of that arbitration agreement so you can pursue the claim in court.
Okay.
So you can go into court publicly and not only make these allegations against Michael Jackson, but Michael Jackson's not here to contradict them, right? So you have 4 plaintiffs, siblings, who are apparently prepared to testify that they were groomed and abused over a series of years. And, you're going to cross-examine those people, but what is the evidence you're going to put to disprove it? It would be horrific for the estate. I think if the case got that far, the estate would throw a lot of money at it to settle.
And the fact that they're going after the people that manage the estate, the companies, this idea of they were enabling him, covering it up, fraud. I mean, again, let me just read out to everybody what all the causes of action are. And I want to save sex trafficking for its own analysis. But just again, they're saying negligence. So negligence, like you had a duty of care to these siblings, and you should have not created an environment where Michael Jackson could have allegedly done this. Negligent hiring, supervision, retention of employees, intentional infliction of emotional distress, breach of contract, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, rescission. Talk to me, and then we'll get to sex trafficking. But what do you make of those causes of action? Because again, it's really about the idea of the companies, the people that were managing the estate, the alleged enablers.
So I think that's helpful from 2 perspectives. One is getting to where the money is, because as you say, there's a number of companies that are defendants in this action. I don't know where the money is. I don't know if it's in the estate or it's in one of the other companies, but you want to make sure that you're suing the entity that has the money, because otherwise winning is pointless. The second one is they do want to press this theory that it's not just Michael Jackson and he had problems. It's everybody who managed him, everybody who enabled him, everybody who ran his fortune was more interested in the money. And their theory is that that continues to this day, years after his passing. They continue to put his image and his financial well-being ahead of the people who were associated with him. And that's a powerful theory of the case. I think that's what they want to push.
Sex trafficking of children by force, fraud, or coercion. Now, we all kind of had an introductory course to sex trafficking. We were talking about the Diddy case, right? They allege, and I mentioned this before, that there were aspects of it that trigger the elements, transporting across state lines, international lines where this abuse occurred. There was the showering of gifts, affection, manipulation, right? Do you think this fits neatly into a civil sex trafficking claim?
I don't think there's anything neat about a civil sex trafficking claim.
It's fair.
They're really hard and they're very fact specific. As alleged, this is sort of what you think about in terms of grooming, abuse, and trafficking. Right? The allegation is he starts associating with them when they're children, he's plying them with gifts, he's treating them lavishly, he interjects alcohol into the proceedings, Xanax, other substances, and then he begins to abuse them, and then he travels them around the world and continues the abuse. I think the element that's missing, I didn't see anything about exposing them to abuse by others, which is sort of what I think was what we saw in the Diddy case that came up about trafficking allegations. I don't know that there's any of that. This seems to be only abuse by Jackson, but there is definitely allegations of grooming, abuse, trafficking.
But again, how do you prove that? So I was sitting in the Harvey Weinstein trial when you talked about allegations from years ago, before there were iPhones, and sometimes, or before we have the iPhones that we have today. But if you're talking even the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, you don't have text messages. You don't necessarily have emails. How did they prove? Is it some sort of faxes? Is it travel receipts that Jackson was with them and in hotels? I mean, how can they even prove any of this without? Is it just their accounts getting on the stand, telling the story, and that's enough?
Well, let's start with the obvious, which are 4 siblings are going to
strength the numbers.
Right. They're going to take the stand. They're going to tell essentially the same story. The jury is going to sit close and assess credibility. If the jury believes them, they don't need any other proof. If the jury concludes, I don't think 4 siblings could come into court and credibly tell the same story and survive cross-examination and make me feel the way I feel if they weren't telling the truth. If that's what the jury thinks at the end of the presentation, then that's enough evidence. Now, you can bolster that if you have receipts, if you have documents that show travel, you have whatever, plane tickets, hotel receipts, wherever they traveled, if you can show. I don't think there's any dispute that they were associated with Michael Jackson and were at times, I don't know, part of his entourage or traveled with him. I'm not sure that's in dispute. So you can show some of those specifics. And they will have the burden of offering testimony that can't be impeached. If they say, I was in this country in this month of this year with Michael Jackson when he abused me, and then the defense can show that Michael Jackson wasn't in that country that month, right? That's good cross-examination.
If they previously did not, remember I mentioned they came to his defense at one point in the 90s. They didn't come forward with this. Apparently the siblings didn't tell their parents what happened. If they previously denied this, how much does that hurt their credibility?
Well, it's going to be a factor. The defense is going to make a lot of noise about that. But we understand, it's 2026. We know that survivors of sexual abuse don't always tell their full story the first opportunity they give them. We know many survivors of sexual abuse repress those memories or lie about them for many years before the truth comes out. And one could offer expert testimony to that effect at trial. So the fact that the stories are changing, and by the way, it's consistent with their story that they were groomed and plied by Michael Jackson, that they would have supported him in previous proceedings. That's actually consistent with the story we're hearing. So I don't think that that is impossible to get around.
I want to go back to something else about a settlement now. So if this case doesn't end, at the very least, for Michael Jackson's estate and those representatives, with a court dismissing the action, right?
Yep.
Just dismissing it. If they end up settling this so it doesn't go to trial, settlements happen for all different kinds of reasons. You know, you don't necessarily believe at the end of the day that the plaintiff, the defendant, who is responsible. If there's a settlement, they can say, you know, if it's a business dispute, you say, hey, listen, they didn't want to go to court. I'm sure each of them were a little at fault. This is such a sensitive topic that if the estate settles for an undisclosed amount, whatever it might be, if this is a PR battle, do they even have the ability to settle at this point of view? Because people will look at it and say, they did something wrong. They wouldn't have settled otherwise. They can go to trial. They can fight it. They have the money.
Well, so first of all, my understanding is there have been settlements in the past. So we've already crossed the territory of he was accused of doing really horrible stuff and settled disputes. We know that is the truth. And there's been a substantial amount of data presented publicly to evidence him behaving inappropriately and or criminally. So I don't know if more of that really changes the narrative that much. If the estate can settle, it probably should. I mean, at some point you have to ask yourself, Jesse, if your two options are settle a claim and have it look publicly like you're buying off victims, or go to trial and let those victims testify publicly.
Yeah.
Like, there's not a good choice.
Yeah, I hear you. You know, it's interesting. I think Thursday, there's a follow-up hearing regarding this dispute over the contract. So I'm curious to see what will happen then. I mean, I know they were in court about a month ago fighting about it. What should we expect there?
Well, so these kind of battles are really important. So I say all the time, you hear me say all the time, so much happens in these cases before you ever get to a trial. And these proceedings, is that agreement enforceable? Are they required to go to arbitration? The whole case could be dismissed because they have to go to arbitration. Those are game-changing decisions in that litigation. Those really will set the path for what happens next, because going to an arbitration to decide whether or not this previous settlement agreement is enforceable, that is a lot less inflammatory than going to a public jury trial in California to find out if there was sex trafficking.
It's a good point. It's a good point. All right, we'll see which way it goes. Thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Thank
Good to see you.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We're also up on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you next time, everybody.
Is calling you from Washington County Detention.
Joseph Duggar is accused of molesting a then 9-year-old girl, but now details from an affidavit are adding a critical piece to this puzzle. What investigators claim happened before his arrest, according to that document. And if these allegations are true, what does it mean? How damaging is it? We're going to unpack this explosive affidavit for you right now. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Real quick, before we go any further, I got to tell you about this app that I think you're going to love. Our sponsor, Upside. Why do I say that? Because you get cash back. Upside gets you cash back. Extra cash back on everyday purchases like gas, groceries, takeout. So here's what you do. You download Upside for free. You claim an offer at one of their 100,000 plus locations. You pay like normal with your card. You verify the purchase. And just like that, money back. So say I need to get gas or I want takeout one night, I'll search for Upside offers first. And after I spend, money appears in my app that I can transfer right into my bank account. Now, Upside's frequent users, they earn an average of $254 back a year. So to start getting your cash back, click the link in the description or scan the QR code. Use our promo code Sidebar because you get an extra 25 cents bonus on every gallon on your first tank of gas. So here we are again. We have another Duggar son, another set of charges, another child involved, another series of allegations, and an affidavit that I will tell you right now is going to make you put down whatever you're holding and just sit with how disturbing these claims are. The Duggar family has been in our orbit for nearly 20 years. 19 kids and counting, a TLC empire built on the image of wholesome Christian family values, matching outfits, courtship rules, whole lot of blessings, and then came Josh Duggar, the 2015 scandal. His sister's coming forward, the documentary, the federal conviction for child pornography, that 12-year sentence that he's serving right now in Texas. We've watched this saga unfold in real time. So when the news broke last week that Joseph Duggar, the 7th child, the one who seemed to fly under the radar, the one married to Kendra with their 4 kids, their quiet Instagram presence, that now he has been arrested on child molestation charges out of Florida, the reaction from a lot of people was something like, not again. Now, again, these are allegations. He hasn't been convicted. But you start reading the affidavit and you realize this isn't just another headline. This is a 31-year-old man, a father himself, allegedly preying on a then 9-year-old girl during a family vacation in Panama City Beach out in Florida in 2020. And the way it allegedly happened, it reads like what experts often describe as grooming. It reportedly starts with asking her to sit on his lap, then it's the couch, then it's a blanket, and then according to the affidavit, it escalates from there in ways that we're going to walk you through with our guest in just a moment, because the progression is something that every parent needs to understand if these allegations are true. Now, before police even arrested Joseph, they did something pretty interesting. According to the affidavit, they apparently asked the victim's father to call him, and Joseph allegedly did something that most people in his position would never do. Authorities claim, he confessed. According to police, he said something during that call that we're going to take a closer look at. He said, quote, his intentions were not pure. And if that is true, right, if there's some sort of recorded evidence of this, testimony of this, intent, that's key in a criminal case like that. And just when you thought that this story couldn't even get more layered, comes the news that days after Joseph was booked, his wife Kendra was also arrested. She's facing misdemeanor charges out in Arkansas. He's facing the same ones, by the way, endangering the welfare of a minor and false imprisonment. So completely separate from what Joseph is accused of in Florida, but the rumor is that it has something to do with locks on the outside of their children's bedroom doors. Couldn't officially confirm this. We don't know if this is the allegation, but this is a sources telling a major outlet. Now, that part of the investigation is still unfolding. We're going to get into what we know and what we don't know. And to help us break this down, we're going to bring on somebody who does this every single day. He's a civil litigation attorney. His practice is centered on representing survivors of child sexual assault. He knows how grooming works. He knows how these cases are built. He's going to walk us through this affidavit line by line, because what's in these pages isn't just a list of accusations. It's an alleged roadmap of how an adult is accused of isolating and manipulating a child, and then allegedly apologized for it.
You've been here before? No, that's right.
So first I want to establish what we already know about this case. Joseph Duggar was arrested in Arkansas on March 18th on a Florida warrant, charging him with 2 counts of lewd and lascivious behavior, one involving a victim under 12, one involving conduct by someone 18 or older. The allegations date back to 2020 when Joseph was 25. His wife Kendra was pregnant with their 3rd child. And according to the affidavit, the incidents happened during a family vacation in Panama City Beach. And the accuser, who was 9 at the time, she's now 14, detailed everything in a forensic interview with Arkansas detectives. Here is what we've learned since the arrest. Before that forensic interview even happened, the accuser's father seemingly confronted Joseph directly on March 17th of this year. That's why we're talking about it. And this is according to the affidavit. And Joseph apparently admitted the allegations were true. That is when law enforcement asked the father to call Joseph again, this time with a detective apparently listening in. And Joseph allegedly made admissions, including, and we mentioned before, that he said his intentions were not pure. So you have an apparent confession, possibly on a recorded line, before police even knocked on his door, right? 2 days after Joseph was booked, The Tontitown Police Department in Arkansas announced that both Joseph and his wife Kendra had been charged with 4 counts of endangering the welfare of a minor and 4 counts each of false imprisonment. Again, misdemeanors seemingly unrelated to the Florida charges per se. A source told People in Us Weekly that the charges came following a home inspection and involved locks installed on the outside of the children's bedroom doors. Now, that hasn't been confirmed by law enforcement. It's the only explanation out there right now, so we're telling you what it is. Kendra was released on bond. Joseph remains in custody. Now, the family has started responding as well. We're going to get into that, how it might play into this case as well. So a lot to get into. Okay, so that's where we are right now, and I want to get into what is actually in this affidavit because details matter. So joining us to break it all down is Chris Klotz, civil litigation attorney who represents survivors of child sexual assault involved in nationwide litigation, by the way, against Catholic clergy, the Southern Baptist Convention, the Boy Scouts of America. Chris, thanks for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to be here. Glad to give you any insight that I can. As a matter of fact, this is right in our backyard. Panama City is just a short drive from where we are, and I actually have had cases over there before. So very
Really?
familiar with that jurisdiction. Yes.
And anything we should know about how cases are handled there, how judges view this, how juries view this?
Well, as you know, we live in the Bible Belt. This is a fairly conservative area, and so I can imagine that these cases are serious, no matter what state or what city or what county they are in. But I can tell you that we have there's a small town vibe in Panama City Beach area, in the Panama City area, and these kind of cases are not going to be favorably looked on, which is as it should be.
Okay, so let's talk about it. Let's get in, before we even get into the affidavit itself, I just want to ask you a bigger picture question. So you've spent your career representing survivors in some of the largest abuse cases in this country. When you see a case like this, where the allegations involve grooming, where there are reports of a confession, an apology, and you're dealing with pretty, high profile person, at least the family is, what stands out to you as either typical or unusual compared to cases you see in trial?
Yeah, so an answer directly comes to mind, but I want to be cautious when I say this because it's not everybody and it's always dangerous to generalize. But when you see people that are inserting themselves in the path of children in kind of an unusual way, and you would, his social media presence and, the whole concept and theme of the TV show with having many, 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 many kids and inserting yourself in that way, sometimes it can be something to at least raise your radar to take a look at. And so, I have seen people that insert themselves in the cases that I've had. I have seen people who insert themselves as youth counselors or as, chaperones or place themselves in the path of children with bad intent. And so this is another example of somebody who has surrounded themselves in a environment rich with young people who are vulnerable, and has apparently, allegedly, according to the allegations, taken advantage of the children that he's been around. And it's just, it's something that is just a part of humanity that we see way too often.
I want to walk through what's actually in this affidavit, okay? And I want to try to go piece by piece because I think that the progression here is really important for people to understand. So we're going to be quoting from People magazine's reporting on the affidavit throughout. So I want to start from the beginning. So according to People, the accuser, who was apparently 9 years old at the time, told investigators that during this 2020 family vacation to Panama City Beach, and again, she's older now from when this allegedly happened, but apparently said...
Yeah, I think she's 14 now.
Yeah, 14. During this family vacation to Panama City Beach, Joseph allegedly asked her to, quote, sit on his lap numerous times. When she would sit on his lap, he would, quote, cradle her with his arms. Okay, let's start right there. That in and of itself, Chris, that wouldn't necessarily be a crime, but it kind of is a lead up, right?
So there's a couple of different, in Florida, there's a couple of different statutes in play. There is a statute that is sexual battery, which from the allegations that I've heard, this doesn't sound necessarily like it would fall in the sexual battery statute under the Florida statutory scheme, which generally involves some type of penetration. A fondling or groping case can be can be pretty broadly interpreted. And so, from what I've read in the allegations that have been put forward, the actual physical touching doesn't matter if it's on top of the clothes or under the clothes. Touching, if it's an unlawful, touching done for the purposes of sexual intent or sexual gratification, it's pretty broad. So the fact that there is, the fact that a child sits on a grown up's lap or maybe gets a hug or is held by them doesn't necessarily automatically make it a sexual offense, but that line can be crossed very, very quickly. And from what I have seen in the allegations, that line appears to have been crossed in such a way that it's given rise to an arrest warrant.
So, according to this affidavit, it was this alleged pattern that shifted over the course of the vacation because the accuser told investigators that Joseph began asking her to sit on the couch beside him. And then, and here's where it allegedly escalates, he, quote, covered the parties with a blanket. Once they were covered, the affidavit says Joseph would, quote, pull the victim's dress up and touch the victim's thighs. And she described that he would, quote, touch the top portions of her thighs and would inch higher and higher, closer to the victim's waistline. Chris, I first want to start here. One, if you didn't have an alleged admission, an alleged confession, it'd be very difficult to prove this unless it was just there was photographs someone took, or is it just the accuser saying something like this happened? Because you're not going to have forensic material. Would it be tough to prove this if you didn't have an alleged admission?
Listen, we have cases all the time where you have a very credible young person whose only evidence is their statement. It makes the case more difficult if there's no physical evidence, if there's no forensic evidence. It does make the case a little bit more difficult, but we have to be able to pursue these cases if you have a credible survivor, complaining witness, victim, whatever the word is that is used in the police report in this instance. But when you have somebody that is making a credible allegation, especially if it's happening on a repeated basis, there needs to be very close attention paid to those. And I know that the prosecutors in these cases, and I know that the law enforcement in these cases try very, very hard to do the best they can to investigate whether they believe that the reporting party is credible or not. But you have to be able to move forward, even if there's no forensic evidence in these cases where you have credible evidence, because there's tons of cases that don't have any forensic evidence. And when you have a child who's described something that has happened on a repeated basis, let's just argue one end of the extreme. I mean, could he have accidentally grazed her thigh when, they were sitting under a blanket together or watching TV? Maybe that could happen accidentally one time, but when you have a pattern of conduct that's happening and it's making the child feel uncomfortable, I really think, you really need to give serious gravity to the statement of the child.
And by the way, this shows, if the specifics of this, it shows absence of mistake, right? It's not like, oh, I was walking by and I, by accident I brushed. It's the alleged deliberate nature, the specificity of this that would show a mistake is not a viable defense or a potential defense.
Listen, if you got a grown up, if you have an adult male or female, but let's just say male in this case because it is a male. If you have an adult male that is putting his hands on the thigh of a 9-year-old child under a blanket and inching his way up, you're going to have a pretty strong idea about what a jury is going to do when they hear that.
Yeah. So let's continue on with the affidavit. It states that
Sure.
During these incidents, and the accuser said they happened, quote, several times, okay, goes to this idea of what we just talked about, absence mistake or alleged absence mistake. Joseph's hand allegedly, quote, grazed the victim's genital area with his hand outside of her underwear. The accuser described feeling uncomfortable and confused. Now, Chris, go back to what you say. What are you taking away from that description there?
Well, that a child has to be in that position in the first place is just disturbing. That kind of conduct, there's almost no way to say that's an accident. It's a stretch to say that type of conduct is going to be an accident, because if this is a a person, if the accused in this case is a person who's around children regularly, and one of his in his social media and his TV shows is around children all the time, it's going to be a mix of young men, mix of young women. A grown up man or woman hopefully knows what boundaries are appropriate. And it just, what has been described is just, there's no way that it really fits into the realm of being appropriate conduct. The one thing I'm not sure, and not to answer a question with a question, but I don't know, do we have information on how they were in proximity with one another? Is it friends, family, friends? What I don't know.
I can't say definitively. I don't think that's made 100% clear. But why? Why is that important for you?
Yeah. If you have a young lady like this that's put in an environment where she's with people that she's familiar with, may have a certain comfort level. If she's not very familiar with Mr. Duger, or the environment that she's in, she may be less likely to speak up if something inappropriate is going on. If she doesn't have a safe person around, if she doesn't have a safe adult that she's familiar with to say, hey, I'm not really sure exactly what's going on, but this doesn't feel right. And having a parent or a trusted friend, or a safe adult, as sometimes said, to talk to, can make a difference. And so sometimes, again, being a little bit reluctant to completely generalize, but you see people who are preying on children, separating them from the herd, or separating them from their zone of safety or people of safety. And so I would be curious to know, in this case, did he kind of pull her away from people that may have been a safety net for her? Was there any type of kind of grooming to get her to come off by herself? Those are kind of questions that I would want to know some answers to, moving forward on the case. And I'm sure the law enforcement's probably investigated that.
So here's something else that complicates the picture. I think this is arguably the potentially the biggest piece of evidence, right? The alleged admission. So according to the affidavit, Joseph, quote, eventually approached the victim and apologized for his actions. And after that apology, quote, the incidents stopped occurring. I want to go this a little bit further here. Now, we mentioned before about Joseph reportedly saying his intentions were not pure, okay? Here's how that actually went down according to people's reporting on the affidavit, that after the victim's forensic interview, Deputy Sheriff Darrell Norris of the Bay County Sheriff's Office, quote, requested the detective and victim's father call Joseph. On that call, according to the affidavit, Joseph allegedly admitted his actions, stating he touched the victim over her clothing, and then he admitted his intentions were not pure. Chris, over to you. Arguably the biggest piece of evidence, but I have a question here. Will that all come in? Is that standard? You don't hear every day like an admission like that. And I wonder, a defense attorney can say, wait a second, how did this exactly happen?
100%. So, as part of my past as an attorney, I've done a ton of criminal defense work early in my career. And so, if I was a criminal defense attorney, in this case, representing Joseph, one of the things I would look at, of course, is the statement made freely, voluntarily, with knowledge? And was there, a situation where he should have been Mirandized before he made those statements? So those things will all be questions that are going to be addressed by Joseph's criminal defense lawyer. When it comes time for this to be brought forward in court, there will probably be some motions to exclude the statement, I would imagine. That a competent defense lawyer would file those types of motions on behalf of Joseph in this case, just to make sure that everything was done procedurally correctly. Is it a little bit unusual maybe for law enforcement to have a family member or victim's family call a perpetrator and solicit a statement? Perhaps. I'm a little bit unclear of the details about who was on that phone call. I'm not sure if a law enforcement officer was on that phone call while that call was being made with the admissions or not. So that would be something that I would definitely want to run down. Let's say the
And whether
defense lawyer
if he knew there was a detective on the phone call.
it could make a difference. It could make a difference to a judge. It could make a difference under the law. So that's something that, competent criminal defense lawyer is going to bring all those things up in motions practice as this case works its way through the criminal justice system. But let's say you get to the end of that process and the judge says, everything was done by the book. These statements are coming in. that's going to be really hard to explain to a jury. And I don't have a crystal ball, but if I was on a jury, or if you kind of put yourself in the shoes of what a normal jury would do, hearing that you had contact like that with this child, then you said, it wasn't, my intentions weren't pure. That is really damning evidence that a jury is probably going to look very hard at.
And I guess also, like, if it's recorded, you have to say to the person it's recorded, right? Like, hey, this is a recorded call.
It depends. That's a really interesting question. So Florida is a two-party state. And if you are originating a telephone call to somebody in the state of Florida and you intend to record it, then you have to let them know, and give them an option to, say, I don't want it to be recorded, or get off the call, or whatever. I have seen instances, for instance, I'm going to say, I think the call was originated from Arkansas in this case, if I remember correctly, is where the victim is from, if I remember correctly. But I'll give you an example because I know this for sure. Mississippi is a one-party state. So if you make a phone call to somebody and you're in Mississippi, and you call somebody that's in another state and it's a two-party state, you don't necessarily have the same need to warn as you would as if the origination of the call comes from a two-party state. So a lot of it will boil down to, when the victim's father called, is he in a one-party state or a two-party state?
Yeah, it's a good point.
Can make a big difference.
It's a really good point. Let's talk about what he's charged with. So he's charged with 2 counts of lewd and lascivious behavior, 1 for molestation of a victim less than 12 years old, and 1 for conduct committed by a person 18 or older. Why 2 separate charges here? How are they different? How are they going to be prosecuted?
So I haven't seen the charging document, but if I had to base, my best estimate is that there was more than one occasion of touching. And that's consistent with what you've read, from the affidavits, and consistent with what we know is that this happened on multiple occasions. So I'm estimating that is a reflection of, this wasn't one isolated conduct. It was a pattern of conduct that it seems like it happened over a period of time, maybe a couple of days.
Now, I haven't even touched on the Arkansas charges. Can we talk about that real quick? So both
Sure.
Joseph and Kendra, they are facing 4 counts each, these misdemeanors of endangering the welfare of a minor, and 4 counts each of false imprisonment. Now, a source told People, this was a source, that those charges came about because of a home inspection and involve locks or alleged locks on the outside of the children's bedrooms doors. Now, this hasn't been confirmed by law enforcement, but I was thinking about this, Chris, and it wouldn't surprise me that what happened was he gets hit with these charges in Florida, and authorities then have to go to the home to see what's happening. Would that be typical? Would I be wrong there?
So they could, of course, they could make an application for a warrant. And if there was something that they were looking for and they had the basis to ask for a warrant to be issued, they would have to kind of transfer that to the state where the warrant would be executed. So I'm not clear on if they were executing a search warrant looking for any type of evidence. I don't know if they were exercising an arrest warrant. I know that he's been arrested up there. My understanding is he's waived extradition, is what I have read, is that he's waived extradition. So that will speed up the process of him going from his home state to where he was arrested down to Panama City Beach. But it kind of depends on what the warrant was for. Was the warrant just an arrest warrant, or was the warrant for a search for evidence? And so I would need to know a little bit more about that, but completely foreseeable that if they go into the home to serve an arrest warrant, and then while they're in there executing the arrest warrant, they see some things that look suspicious or unusual, and then they make a note of that because that is a situation where they had permission to be there to execute an arrest warrant, and they see something that's out of order or strange that needs to be followed up on, that would be a way for them to have access to that information.
I wanted to get your opinion about one more thing, the family. This is an emotional aspect to it, but I also wonder if it's going to be a legal aspect to it. So what do I mean? So as you might have expected, the family has started to respond, and the reactions are very interesting. You have Jinger Duggar, who spoke about the arrest on her podcast. She was visibly emotional. She said, quote, "It has been such a long week. It's been one of those weeks that feels like years. and I did not think my heart could break like it has this week. The pain and heartbreak that we've had over this, and just thinking of how it's affected so many, it's just unthinkable, so hard and painful on many levels. Jill Duggar, husband Derek Dillard, they put out a statement on the family blog. They said, quote, "We were shocked yesterday evening to learn of Jill's brother's arrest. We are shocked and heartbroken. We strongly condemn abuse. We support the rule of law and hope that justice will be achieved. Our hearts go out to the innocent juvenile victim of this unspeakable crime and her family. We pray God gives her strength, comfort, and hope, and that she's able to get all the help and support she needs and deserves in the days ahead." Josh Duggar, remember, he's currently serving that 12-year sentence in Texas for receiving child sexual abuse material. His lawyer released a statement to Us Weekly on his behalf, and it's worth kind of reading exactly what it said. Josh Duggar does not know the details of the claims that have been made against his brother Joseph, but he knows the media frenzy that any incident regarding his family creates. He feels for his brother because everything is amplified out of proportion by the media interest in his family. This makes the pain of the criminal justice process exponentially worse. Josh prays for his brother, and he hopes that he can stay strong. He, too, has felt the crushing wave of accusation that is powered by the media spectacle to which his family is subjected. The only reason, Chris, I think this could be relevant is if you're dealing with a situation where Joseph pleads guilty or is found guilty, and there might be statements made on his behalf of some kind in court regarding sentencing, because I don't see them having any role as witnesses in the case unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, I wouldn't see them as witnesses necessarily as fact witnesses. Could they be mitigation witnesses? Mitigation witness is somebody who comes in who said, hey, this is out of character for the person. Never heard of them doing anything. They've lived an upstanding life. That's a mitigation witness, which is trying to convince the judge to usually give a lesser sentence. Those type of witnesses appear all the time in a post plea situation or a post trial where there's a sentencing situation. So would they have any information about what actually happened, in Panama City, in the facts of the case unfolding? Probably not. Would they appear for their family member to say, hey, this is generally a good person, this is out of character, please give him the least possible sentence that would be expected? But something that what you just told me about that his brother is actually doing a sentence right now.
Yeah.
Again, always try to be very careful with generalizations. And there's no excuse for abusing children. There's no excuse. But sometimes, by way of trying to understand how these things happen, now that you've mentioned that, I wonder, is there any type of abuse history for Joseph or his brother or family, in their background? I don't know, but I have seen enough cases where perpetrators have their own traumatic past. Again, it doesn't excuse what they do in their present or controlling their conduct on their own, but sometimes it can be something to at least have on the radar to say, hey, is this person a victim themselves in the past? And I have seen in cases where somebody's accused criminally actually bring to the attention of the court, hey, I apologize for engaging in this type of conduct, abusing children. I had my own past, which I think has formed my present. And so I have seen people talk about that in sentencings before, where they're trying to at least explain why they have engaged in this type of conduct. Again, there's no excuse for it. There's never an excuse for child abuse, ever. But it can at least help us know that what happens to people as children can impact them as adults and their conduct as adults. And so I think it's always wise for us when we're having these conversations to say, hey, we need to watch out for our own young children and what's happening with them, because what happens to them now, as we are parents and caretakers of our children, we need to be mindful to protect them so they don't have experiences which could shape their future in a negative way.
It's a good point. It's a great point, actually. And I've seen that in other kinds of cases for sure. Just to be clear here, look, I haven't seen any evidence, and you said it too, that there's no evidence I've seen or you've seen that would suggest that they were victims of abuse, but something to think about nonetheless, again, assuming these allegations are true. But look, that is where things stand. Joseph is awaiting extradition. Kendra is out on bond. The Arkansas investigation still unfolding. And you have a family that has been through this before. More scandal. Now they're navigating yet another chapter in a story that is continuing. Chris Klotz, thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check us out on NBC's Peacock as well. If you want to follow me, X, Instagram, my News Nation show, Jesse Weber Live, Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern. I'll see you next time, everybody.
दुनिया दो दिन दी बंदावे मौत दमाल दुनिया दो दिन दी दुनिया दो दिन दी बंदावे मौत दमाल दुनिया दो दिन दी आए कर तू कुछ ख्याल दुनिया दो दिन दी सुल्तान भी आए बड़े बड़े सुल्तान भी आए ओढ़क जा बिच खाक समाए ओढ़क जा बिच खाक समाए आए हो गए ख्वाब ख्याल दुनिया दो दिन दी आए हो गए ख्वाब ख्याल दुनिया दो दिन दी दुनिया दो दिन दी बंदावे मौत दमाल दुनिया दो दिन दी ऊंचे लम्हे महल बना दे ऊंचे लम्हे महल बना दे दगा फरेब ते जुल्म कमा दे दगा फरेब ते जुल्म कमा दे हाय कुछ नहीं खड़ते नाल दुनिया दो दिन दी हाय कुछ नहीं खड़ते नाल दुनिया दो दिन दी ओ दुनिया दो दिन दी बंदावे मौत दमाल दुनिया दो दिन दी दुनिया देंदी दुख बतेरे दुनिया देंदी दुख बतेरे वीरा कोलू वीर नखेड़े वीरा कोलू वीर नखेड़े आए मावा तू बिछड़े लाल दुनिया दो दिन दी आए मावा तू बिछड़े लाल दुनिया दो दिन दी ओ दुनिया दो दिन दी बंदावे मौत दमाल दुनिया दो दिन दी सुख दे सजना सारे संगी सुख दे सजना सारे संगी नस जांदे जद आवे तंगी नस जांदे जद आवे तंगी हाय कोई नहीं गम दा प्याल दुनिया दो दिन दी ओह कोई नहीं गम दा प्याल दुनिया दो दिन दी हसना रोना गम लाचारी हसना रोना गम लाचारी आज मेरी कल तेरी बारी, आज मेरी कल तेरी बारी। हाय कंजरी दी मिसाल दुनिया दो दिन दी, हाय कर तू कुछ ख्याल दुनिया दो दिन दी। ओ दुनिया दो दिन दी बंदा बे मौत दा माल दुनिया दो दिन दी। ओह कर तू कुछ ख्याल दुनिया दो दिन दी। गुत वे तुड़ानी मिट्टी दा वीरा, गुत तुड़ानी मिट्टी दा वीरा। अपना आप संभाल बशीरा, अपना आप संभाल बशीरा। हाय मिट्टी मिट्टी दा माल दुनिया दो दिन दी, हाय मिट्टी मिट्टी दा माल दुनिया दो दिन दी। हाय कर तू कुछ ख्याल दुनिया दो दिन दी, हाय कर तू कुछ ख्याल दुनिया दो दिन दी। ओ दुनिया दो दिन दी बंदा मिट्टी दा माल दुनिया दो दिन दी। हाय कर तू कुछ ख्याल दुनिया दो दिन दी, हाय कर तू कुछ ख्याल दुनिया दो दिन दी। दुनिया दो दिन दी बंदा बे मौत दा माल दुनिया दो दिन दी। दुनिया दो दिन दी बंदा बे मौत दा माल दुनिया दो दिन दी। आए कर तू कुछ ख्याल दुनिया दो दिन दी। सुल्तान भी आए, बड़े बड़े सुल्तान भी आए। ओढ़क जा बिच खाक समाए, ओढ़क जा बिच खाक समाए।